Morning. I get the honor of introducing Tim to you this morning officially. I first kind of met Tim or got to know him about 9 years ago when the youth group was looking for a place to sleep as we were driving to Kentucky. And Tim opened up the church where he was. He wasn't there, but we slept on the floor of his church for 2 years in a row. And then about the same time that it was becoming impossible for us to go back to Redbird, Tim started Reach and invited us to come there. So we've been doing that for 7 years now. Taken a group of about 25 to 30 people to Roanoke to serve. So I started working on a list of the things that we've learned and discovered about ourselves and each other at Reach. And then I decided that Tim was supposed to preach, and I would just let him do that. But I just want to tell you one of the things that means the most to me about this organization. It's that we're not doing it to see how we can serve or how we can do something for someone else. We do it with the attitude of this gives us an opportunity to live the life that Christ wants us to live in relationship with one another. And that relationship has become important enough to me that now that I'm not going to take kids on the mission trip, I'm serving on the board of directors for Reach. So we will always have this connection, or at least as long as Tim will tolerate me. So this is Tim Dayton, the executive director of Reach.
Thank you very much, Claire. And thank all of you for allowing me to speak, but more importantly to me, thank you for allowing me to share my heart and my passion with you. As Claire said, my name is Tim, and I am now currently also the pastor of a church because they are one of the partners that Reach got over the years. And so not only the pastor, the executive director, and as the executive director of Reach, which stands for Real Experiences Affecting Change. And we're located in Southwest Virginia in a town like any other town. This is not Appalachia. I did the Appalachian Service Project for years and years, and I've done Redbird, where you go into an entire community that is hurting. This is a regular town with regular people and regular problems, which are not unlike they are in Appalachia. So that's who we are. What we do is pretty simple. We connect and engage people in positive service experiences. And what I mean by a positive service experience is an experience where you get to see the need, you get to go meet the need, and then you get to see your results. Pretty simple. And how we do it is also fairly simple. We connect and engage, partner, and collaborate and cooperate with other individuals, other nonprofits, other churches, other companies, other neighborhood groups in order to do what it is that they already do. We don't recreate the wheel. Now, if I was to say Habitat, you'd say, oh, they build houses. If I was to say a particular community garden, they build community gardens. If I was going to say a homeless shelter or Internet Hospitality Network, which I believe they work with the homeless people. When you say Reach, we don't have a issue in particular that we deal with because there's plenty of good people out there doing plenty of good things, and there's no reason to recreate that. As a matter of fact, Reach prides itself in the fact that we own nothing because we partner. If it's not worth your doing, if it's not worth your taking the effort to try to get something done, there's no use in us jumping in there and trying to save the day. So we partner. The important thing to us, though, is the why we do it. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Roanoke area. And this is not the why, but you need to understand some of the issues because we're an issue-driven society where we like to know what the problems are for some reason. And so Roanoke area in Southwest Virginia is a little over 100,000 people. It has the same poverty rate as the rest of the nation. It ranges somewhere around 15 to 18%. What we call working poor is 75%. And let me define working poor for you. Working poor are the people who actually are, in most ways, responsible citizens. They have jobs. They have a place that they live. They feed their kids. They do all the things that those of us do in everyday life. The only difficulty is, and why they're called working poor, is they can never save up enough money to do those big things like buy a house. And so that's Roanoke. And that talks about the community. And so for 7 years, as Claire said, we have been in that community trying to figure out who to partner with and what to do. And what we've discovered is that particular community, as a lot of communities are right now in the United States, are imploding. There is a growing distrust. Distrust of businesses, distrust of politicians, distrust of financial organizations, distrust of education, and distrust, believe it or not, of churches. There is a tendency in the part of Roanoke that we work in, which again I need to impress upon you is not all that different than the rest of the world, to highlight the differences and to point out each other's shortcomings. More and more people seem to be governed by fear, and because of that, we see expressions of hate and anger. What it comes down to for us, and the way I would describe it, and the way I would describe it from all my years of working with people in poverty and people just in the community, is that they've lost hope. Not only have they lost hope, they feel like they're all alone, that nobody else cares about the issues that are important to them. Nobody else cares about things that matter to them, and they feel powerless to do anything about it. And I don't know about you, unless you're planning on caring for them for the rest of their lives, we can't just keep doing what we've been doing. Now, Reach, as I mentioned, Habitat does houses, and the Community Gardens does gardens and all those kinds. Reach does all those things. But that's not the issue. That's not the tendency that we're trying to get into the community to make a difference with. And so our mission, as is our mission statement, is to restore hope, alleviate loneliness, and empower individuals to transform their own lives and homes and communities. Because, again, we've discovered that when you fix a house, you're just putting a Band-Aid on another issue. When you give them food, you're just putting a Band-Aid, a necessary Band-Aid, don't get me wrong, on another issue. When you go out and help them to clean up their streets, or you go out there and you work with the homeless, when you do all those things, what we're really doing is putting Band-Aids, very, very necessary, scripturally based Band-Aids that we need to put on. But let's not fool ourselves. The issues will always be there. And so what Reach has done for the last 7 years is gone out into the community, and we literally, everywhere we go, we just say, here are my hands. How can I serve? That's it. We'll go up to you, we'll go up to the community, we'll go up to the store, we'll go up to the businesses, we'll go up to the neighborhood groups. Here are my hands, how can I serve? I've got 30 people that will work 6 hours a day for 5 days. What do you need? How can we help you to help your community? When we go out into the community, the first thing that we need to do is develop trust. Now remember, I told you just a moment ago that it's the distrust that is making what I believe our communities that dysfunctional. And so for 7 years, Reach has done this, and for 7 years we have put into the community 100,000 hours of service. sometimes picking up trash, sometimes distributing food, sometimes repairing homes, sometimes carrying children on our backs until our backs ached, cleaning rivers and finding some of the most unusual things. We do whatever it takes in order to develop trust, to begin to be in relationship with those people, to begin to be a part of that community. And here's the interesting thing for you all from Medford. You've been coming for 7 years. Of those 100,000 hours, I can directly attribute 10,000 hours between your work groups and your youth that have come as interns who've spent the whole summer working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week in order to serve that community. That is unbelievable. But I have to tell you something. I did not think it would take as long as it has for them to trust us. What we've discovered is when a community is that lost, that hopeless, that powerless, that feeling of loneliness, that you just don't show up one day and do one thing for them and they go, oh, so we can trust you and things are going to be better. So what Reach does, the reason we do it is we want to teach people, we want to spread to people, we want people to understand the joy of serving. Now, when I talk about the joy of serving, all of us know what I'm talking about, but a lot of us define it differently, and I need you to understand how we define it so that I can explain to you what it really is. I grew up not far from here. I grew up in Ambler, right outside of Philadelphia. My dad was an ex-Marine captain, and he worked at Philco Manufacturing as a line manager. Across the street from us was the gas station attendant for Sunoco. I don't know if Sunoco still exists. Across the street from us was one of those traveling salesmen with the sales trucks that he would go door to door. We had another shop owner across the street. We were in a working class neighborhood. And for 10 years, I learned about duty. I learned about duty to my country. I learned about duty to my family. I learned about duty to God as I grew up as a Presbyterian. Well, we were lucky. My dad got an offer to take a job in northern New Jersey up in Union County. He had been offered a job that was an advancement for him. He was going to be work for a consulting firm where he had to drive into New York City every day. And while we were up there, we had arrived, I guess. We had money. We belonged to country clubs, although I had no idea that that actually meant anything, since everybody in our community belonged to country clubs, and we went on vacations, and we had a big house, and it seems that we could do anything that we wanted to do, and so my dad, I guess appropriately, had us become Episcopalians, where I learned what it means, the expression, to he who is given much, much is expected. I learned about responsibility. I said, okay, I understand duty and responsibility. I get that. When around 18, it was time to go off to college. And I got the opportunity to go to a college down in Virginia, which I'm learning that evidently a lot of your kids like to go south. I was too scared to go north. So I went south to Lynchburg, Virginia, to Lynchburg College, where I met a Catholic girl. And when you're dating a Catholic girl, you basically go to Mass. And I got to know for almost 4 years the priest. And I learned a new concept about service. I learned about social justice. I learned about Dorothy Day, the Catholic Workers Movement. I learned about justice for everyone. I was like, I like that. We have duty. Now we have responsibility. Now I have justice. That's why you serve. Well, that ended, and I fell in love with a Baptist. I married the Baptist, but it didn't take long for either one of us to decide I didn't want to be Baptist and she didn't want to be Episcopalian. For my short stay in the Baptist church, I learned, correct or not, guilt. I didn't like that reason to do anything, so Baptist was not my thing. And so we went looking for a church. We went looking for a community. We went looking for a place to belong. And there was a local church that had a softball team that had beer after softball games. Or so I was told. Need I tell you that they were United Methodists? And also fitting the United Methodists, they never did have beer. So I don't know what that thing was. But when I joined United Methodist Church, it was if I had been enlightened. Now, we're also not accused much of that as United Methodists of enlightenment, but I would call this my enlightenment period because in the midst of learning about John Wesley, in the midst of learning about the importance of service and missions, in the midst of learning what I've come to understand is called practical divinity, where you actually are called to experience that love, you're called to experience that faith, to experience that Christian living, and to put all of it into action. Now, somewhere along this line, I had realized that I am a person of action. Now, it sounds cool. It's not always. The best example I have of that where it's not so good is I need to be always getting something done. If there's something to be done, you go do it. Well, that can work out real good in some situations, but where it doesn't necessarily work out is my wife was a teacher. She is retired now. And every morning, because she would go to work before I did, I would make her breakfast. Man of action. What do you want, hon? Get up there and make that. Make the eggs the right way. Make the toast. Have her coffee ready. Give her coffee. Man of action. I'm finished eating. I'm clearing your plate. You're done. Sorry you're still eating. You can drink the coffee later. So not always a good thing. But the really good thing for me was I became familiar with the scripture that you read just a little while ago, which was from James chapter 2, verse 14 through 17, which I simplify, because I do like that the way the Methodists allow me to read the scripture and then to interpret. I interpret that as you are known by your actions. It was if my life had come together because I had realized that service, doing for others, was just a huge part of who I was. I had no idea why. I just figured somehow, somewhere along the line from the duty that my dad taught me to my God and country and to my family and the responsibility I was given as an Episcopalian and the social justice that I learned from the Catholic Church and then from my short stint of being a Baptist that, you kind of owed it. I mean, it's the least you could do for all that he has done for you. It was like it had brought it all together. So I became a youth minister. And the primary focus of my youth ministry became service. If all else fails, go do something for somebody else. And I realized that everybody was just like me. The youth would come home from these trips and you'd ask them, how was it? Oh, it was awesome. I did this for these people, and I did that, and I did all these other things, and I feel really good. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. But I started to learn some other things while I was on these trips. One of them was the people that you help and that you do things for. At first, what I learned is they're not always all that thankful. So that was a little upsetting. The least they could do is be thankful for what I had done. And then I realized it's not that they don't feel thankful, it's they're embarrassed. One of my ASP mission trips, there was a teenage girl who lived in the house. She was about 15 years old. And I was like, sweet, all my youth group is going to meet this 15-year-old, and they're going to have fun, and they're going to change each other's lives, and it's going to be this awesome experience. And every day she hid in the house. Well, I had inadvertently broken my foot while I was there, so I had to go into the house, and I ended up watching soap operas with her every day. And I found out after a couple of days that what it was is she was embarrassed. And so I've learned that everybody who does feels good about it. Everybody who does. I don't care what your age is. When you do something for somebody else, you feel good about it. But I also began to learn that the people who received the help, the people who needed it, weren't so thrilled. That they didn't want to be in that situation. So as I did reach, and as I started to do that, and I started to talk to people at the homeless shelter, and we're always talking about they're always asking for money. So should you give money or should you not give them money? And so because I live and breathe in Roanoke, where we do all this mission, I get to meet them on a personal basis, and I get to talk to them. And so one day we said, we can give you some money. It's all yours. Or what do you think if I give you some money, maybe 10 times as much, but you have to give it away? And that's when I began to realize that the real power is in the doing and the giving. So the joy of serving, where on earth does this come from? Is this just something that I was born with? Because you see some people, you talk about positive or negative, they see a cup, oh, it's half full. Somebody else sees a cup, oh, it's half negative. They were just born that way. Are some people born that they want to serve, while other people are born to be selfish? Didn't make any sense. Every single person I would talk to said when they did something for somebody else, whether it was to teach their kid how to do math or to hold the door open for somebody or to give out food or to fix their home, any of these actions that they did, they were just so joyful in it that there had to be more to it. So our other scripture today comes from Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, which says basically, in God's image you were made in God's image. That was pretty easy for me as a kid because I knew at that point when I heard it that God was probably pretty good looking. I got a little older and realized I did have two sisters, so God looked kind of like us. But as I got even older and I started to experience these things, I realized an image is not necessarily about physical attributes. It's about characteristics. And where do you find the characteristics of God? In the Gospels. What kind of stuff did Jesus do all the time, and how did he feel about it? He felt absolutely wonderful. So the why we do it is simple. We're trying to teach the community the joy of serving. If the community would realize how much fun it is to do for somebody else, they wouldn't be looking to us all the time to get it done for them. So then the quick question would be, why on earth do we bring you guys down there? What it is that you're doing? A lot of you understand the joy of serving, although you may not necessarily know why. It's because the community is stubborn. The community has been lost for a long time. I need somebody to model it. I need somebody to show it. I need somebody to be that spark, to be that catalyst, to be that strength that shows them what it could be like. And so there's three things that I just want you to be aware of. Three fundamental beliefs of reach as we go into the community. The first is this: everyone receives great joy when helping somebody else. Number two, no one chooses to be on the receiving end. Nobody wants to need help. And number three, at the end of the day, every single one of us wants to feel like our life mattered, that we had made a difference. So let me put it another way. We believe everyone feels great joy when participating in selfless acts of generosity. In other words, doing something for someone else without expecting something in return. Number two, we believe that no one chooses to be needy. In fact, they find it degrading, debilitating, and disheartening. They feel hopeless, lonely, and powerless. And number three, at the end of the day, we believe everyone wants to know that their having been around makes a difference. And we believe by harnessing this joy that no longer will we have to just provide for other people, that we will actually teach them and encourage them to be involved in their own lives and to transform their own lives. So what does this look like for us? You just got to keep being yourselves. You got to, when you enjoy it, don't be a martyr. Just enjoy the heck out of doing something for somebody else. You need to look for every opportunity to do for somebody else. But I need you to know one last thing. Is one of the things we've discovered in the community is most of these groups that we help serve in the community never really know what the needs are. And it's because the people that we're trying to help don't even know what it is they need or want. And so sometimes as good parents, you have to decide what it is that you're going to do in order to show them how it feels to do for other people. So we have a project that we started where we, in the side of home or the side of town that we work in, 1 out of 10 homes is abandoned. And so that was the one thing that we could find that everybody in the community seemed to care about for different reasons. You know, there's vagrants that are living there. We don't want that. It's an eyesore. We don't want that. It decreases my values. We don't want that. But everybody in the community wanted those houses to disappear. So we purposely bought an abandoned home that the city almost gave to us in order to get the people in the community to fix it up themselves. Well, let's be honest, you know that doesn't work that easily. So like when Medford came down and there's 30 people working on a house, it looks like wham, bam, look at all the stuff we got done. And I invite the community in and I don't exactly tell them that Medford did it, no offense. I tell them that the group and the community came together and this is how much further. And they're like, oh, I want to help. I want to be a part of the solution. And so they do their part. And our hope is that ultimately they will realize that they can do this. And it's a great, and I hate to use the word gimmick, it's a great gimmick because it's an abandoned home and what we're doing is flipping it. Which means, because we have volunteer labor, which means because a lot of the money and materials are donated, which means that when we sell the house, there's going to be a lot of money in it. That money immediately goes to the next house. So the plan is buy one, fix it up, buy the next one. Well, the Lord has a sense of humor. We bought 2 houses 3 years ago that it turned out we had bought illegally. So they took them back. We got our money back. No fault on anybody's, just one of those things. And we purchased the one we're doing now. We're 80% finished. Those 2 houses came up for sale again. And so we're trying to figure out, is this God's way of teasing us because now I have to come up with money before I've sold the house? Or is this God's way of saying, well done, faithful servant? You know, have a little faith. Things are going to work out. You're going to get these next 2 houses that are done. It's an amazing possibility for us. And what is the most amazing is the community came to us and said, hey, they're for sale. Can we do these too? The city came to us and said, hey, they're for sale again. Would you guys take these on? 5 of the churches in that community came to us and said, we'll give you $1,000. Can we do these? They're coming together. They're doing God's work, whether they know it's God's work or not. Would you bow your heads for a moment, please? Dear Lord, I thank you so very much that you continue to give us the opportunity to serve, the joy that comes from serving, the possibilities, the excitement. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to have gotten connected with Medford and the great help they have done in helping us to turn around that community. Lord, I know it is a long and arduous task. We know that solutions and things don't disappear overnight, but we're in it. We're in it 100%. In your name we pray. Amen.